Welcome back to Local 4 Live. Today, many Texas residents coping with severe weather yet again, or its aftermath, as search and rescue efforts continue. On Monday, many were told to move to higher ground as more rain threatened to cause additional flooding in that region. 129 people are confirmed dead in Central Texas after those floods earlier this month. 160 people are still missing. Now, some of those victims, many of them, were from Camp Mystic, an all-girls Christian camp along the Guadalupe River. The area saw more flash flooding yesterday and over the weekend. Flood watches and advisories remain in effect for that area as more rain is still expected in parts of the states. So today we want to have a conversation not only about the flooding, but just to talk to Dr. Rose Moten about how to talk about these things with your children. Yeah. Tragedy is one thing. It's a difficult conversation. I think once you include tragedy involving the loss of children, yes, it elevates it because now it really hits home. Somebody their age has lost their life. So
someone their age, exactly.
Right. How do you have that conversation without scaring them, yes, and traumatizing them?
Yeah, first of all, my heart goes out to the community, the parents. It's a parents and community's worst nightmare, and it's that conversation you hope to never have to have with your children, but you must have it. You must have it. Oftentimes parents believe that if we just, keep it from them, yeah, it'll go away, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Why do you think we must have the conversation?
Because children are picking up on the parents' cues all the time. They're hearing the story, they're hearing the devastation. For some of these children, especially in the area, it may be friends of theirs that they have lost. Yeah. So when parents refuse to have the conversation, again, thinking that it's in the best interest of the child, what really is going to happen is that child is going to create all types of narratives in their head. And that just makes it so much worse, exponentially.
It's interesting you say that because after we had one of our tragedies here at a high school, I traveled to Columbine to talk to the folks there about some things that they had learned after the fact and, the do's and don'ts. And they had said that one of the hardest lessons they learned after the fact was that they really dealt with the trauma of the kids involved at the school, but neglected their siblings.
Wow, yes.
Because they had their own trauma and forgot that they were going through something, even though they weren't in the school at the same time.
That's so true.
So, it's to your point, I think we often forget how keen and how tuned in our kids really are. They're paying attention. They pick up everything, and we don't notice it.
Everything. I've said oftentimes they're little sponges.
Yeah.
And to your point, they look at the victims, they look at the parents, but they forget the siblings. And the siblings, there's so many layers to grief for young children, depending on their age, but all children just don't have the capacity, the brain development to be able to process it properly. So it's up to us to do that for them. And it's not unusual for children, when you talk about like the siblings of the children, they're experiencing their grief, but also they're looking to their parents because it's like, how is my parent reacting?
Sure.
And for children, it's not unusual for them to suppress their emotions and grief in an effort not to put more on the parent that is grieving, which again will show up later on in life. So talking to your children, speaking honestly with them, really helps to not only help them process it, but it fortifies them later on in life.
Right, yeah. So with this Texas situation, let's say it's a Metro Detroit family, right? It's not something that has hit us unless you have maybe relatives or friends down there, but it's just something that has happened. Is that still a conversation you should have if there's not a direct connection? Yeah. And how do you open that door?
You open the door just like you would open a door with anything else. If you're sitting at the dinner table, I always say it's a great time to talk to kids in the car, believe it or not.
Because they're trapped and can't get away from you?
Not just because of that. That's a good point. That's not the point I was making. But because it can be uncomfortable when you broach uncomfortable conversations, and sometimes the eye contact with kids is hard. So when you're in a car, they don't have to make that eye contact. They don't have to make that eye contact.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, so that can be a great starting point to at least start the conversation. But you can, again, eye contact is important, but we have to keep in mind the child's lack of experience in dealing with these type of tragedies. So it can be very uncomfortable. Anything we can do to help minimize the discomfort is going to help our message that we're wanting to impart on them to be received much more easily.
So what is the message? What do we tell them about dealing with the grief of a tragedy like this?
Yeah, we want to, first and foremost, just really ensure them about their own safety.
Okay.
Because one of the things, when I was a carefree kid without a care in the world, trauma or death was the furthest thing from my mind until I faced that,
Right, right.
So you want to just really impress onto them their safety and how there are people out there that are ensuring their safety and how safety mechanisms, especially this time of the year with children going to camp.
Right.
Because this is being talked about with their friends. You better believe if
Sure.
they're going outside and
Right,
playing with friends or they're over friends' homes, it's being talked about in the homes. And so they're picking up on all of this. So really to really impart what's being done as far as helping the families and the victims in Texas, but
Okay.
also preventative measures that are being done even in our area.
Sure.
So if there is some natural disaster that occurs, come up with a plan as a
okay.
family. That's
Okay.
always so very
It
important.
probably is comforting just to have
It's
something like
comforting
that.
because it empowers the
Yeah,
children.
right.
Yeah.
My daughter is overly curious, right?
Yeah.
She wants to know details of everything. How detailed do you get with the kids?
It's age appropriate, so depending on that child. And that's something we have great resources online now, right? But if you know a therapist or someone that works with children, you can even Google. I'm really big on educating parents about the different psychosocial developmental stages children are in, because I have 4 children myself. They're all adults now. I tell them they're my peers now, but they're all adults now, but they were all in different developmental stages. So the conversation I would have with my oldest child would be different with my youngest child because, again, the brain development. A 5-year-old cannot conceptualize or think abstractly like a 17-year-old can. So you want to take that in consideration. Use the language that's appropriate to their developmental stage.
Okay, so, and then in terms of recognizing if your child might be suffering through some kind of trauma, or if they're seeing something like, this horrendous event in Texas or closer to home, how do you know when they might want to talk or they need some space alone? Like, we're trying to figure out what the boundaries are.
Any change in behavior.
Okay.
And not just behavior. For children, it's not uncommon for when they are afraid or they're confused or they don't know what to do with their emotions, they manifest itself physically. So complaining about some somatic symptoms such as headaches or stomach aches or things of that sort is something to look out for, because that could be an indication that they're having difficulty with processing some emotions that's going on with them. But any change in behavior such as withdrawal, not wanting to go outside, or not wanting to go to camp, these type of things can be key indicators that that conversation needs to be had.
I've seen it the opposite way, where there's sometimes anger. What
That's
does
an
that mean?
emotion too. So especially if you're not used to that child being angry.
Right.
So that shift and seeing an angry child is an indication that, something's going on here. As a parent, it's our responsibility to investigate that.
Right. Okay. And then last thing for you. Every parent has the best, intentions for all their kids, but sometimes we need professional help.
Yes.
What's the best way to get a hold of, maybe you or another, professional just looking for some guidance?
So it's great to talk to your pediatrician.
Okay.
Friends and families are great referral sources. So especially if they've had their children involved in, be it camps or therapists that they found beneficial, that's a great place to start. We've really, over the years, destigmatized the whole
mental health conversation.
Mental health conversation. So that's a great starting point as well.
Okay, Dr. Moten, thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate your time. We're going to keep you on speed dial.